He asked, did we win? The answer is yes. Damar, you won. You've won the game of life.
The game of life, overshadowing the game of football. After Buffalo Bills player Damar Hamlin collapses from cardiac arrest at Paycor Stadium. Bills and Bengals players, Houday Nation and Bills Mafia unite in prayer.
I hope that he get better quick, and I hope that he can get back on the football field soon.
The quick action by medical staffs of both teams, plus top-notch care at UC Medical Center, saves Damar Hamlin's life and puts life-saving techniques like CPR into the spotlight.
Elbows locked, shoulders over, and you're going to push down hard and fast.
How to live a heart-healthier lifestyle while learning what to do in a crisis. Let's talk about it in this edition of Let's Talk Cincy. From WLWT, this is Let's Talk Cincy, presented by Western and Southern Financial Group. Put our financial strength behind you.
Hippocrates said, where there is love of medicine, there is love of humankind. Both of those loves were on display on Monday Night Football when the Buffalo Bills took on the Cincinnati Bengals. Hello, I'm Ashley Kirkland. Welcome to Let's Talk Cincy. Bills player Damar Hamlin suffered cardiac arrest during that game on national TV. Thankfully, he is on the road to recovery. But the American Heart Association says that isn't always the case. They say there are more than 356,000 cardiac arrests each year, and almost 90% of them are deadly. What happened at Paycor brought an outpouring of support, humanity, and a renewed focus on heart health.
The scene before the game was electric. 70,000 fans packed into Paycor Stadium, millions watching on television, all hyped for the game between two AFC heavyweights.
Y'all gonna be in that jungle crying, and we gonna be roaring. Houday!
But less than 10 minutes into the game, a routine tackle turns into an extraordinary fight for life. Bills player Damar Hamlin collapses. Medical teams leap into action, performing CPR on the field, stunned fans sitting in silence.
You knew it was serious, and you could tell in the crowd that everybody knew that was serious.
Damar was taken to UC Medical Center in critical condition. Fans outside the hospital joining hands, praying for a miracle. A miracle answered days later.
We think that he will, recover well from this. And he has a great positive attitude.
Damar, a man known for his generosity to others, thankful for all the love and support he received, promising to pay it forward.
And joining us now is Dr. Robbie Paulson with the University of Cincinnati College of Medicine. Dr. Paulson, thanks so much for being here with us. Now, Damar suffered cardiac arrest. What exactly is that?
Sure. So cardiac arrest is different than a heart attack. Cardiac arrest is when the heart stops. And while most causes of cardiac arrest are due to an underlying heart problem, that's not always the case. People can suffer cardiac arrest due to problems with breathing that lead to the heart stopping, due to massive blood clots, due to problems with electrolytes in their blood, and lots of different reasons. But whenever somebody becomes unresponsive, stops breathing, and is pulseless, we do call that cardiac arrest.
Yeah, and of course now everyone is interested and they want to know, what are the signs of cardiac arrest? Are they different for men and women?
Sure. So cardiac arrest itself is not different between men and women. However, heart attack or acute coronary syndrome can be. Signs of cardiac arrest that I would look for would be whenever a person collapses, becomes unresponsive, has irregular or absent breathing, or loses color. So if you go up to them, you tap them on the shoulder, try to shake them and arouse them, and they aren't responding to you at all, you should be concerned and immediately go get somebody for help.
So you touched on it a little bit there, but what is the difference between cardiac arrest and a heart attack?
Okay, so a heart attack is when there is a blood clot that happens in one of the arteries that perfuses the heart muscle. Signs of a heart attack, I think we're all very familiar with. In men and women, they can be a little bit different, but classically, people will complain of chest pain or chest pressure. They may have shortness of breath. They may feel their heart beating irregularly. We call that palpitations. They may get really, really sweaty or nauseous. Women or people with diabetes can feel less typical symptoms, less classic. Some people may even just feel as subtle as indigestion, when in reality, they're having a very serious medical problem.
And how can we recognize, Dr. Paulson, if someone is experiencing a heart attack, or what are the warning signs?
Sure. So often there may be warning signs of a heart attack sort of coming up in the days to weeks leading up to an incident, though that's not always the case. Some classic warning signs might be a person that's feeling more short of breath or feeling some mild chest discomfort with activities such as climbing stairs, walking a distance, and noticing that they have to actually stop and rest before recovering. We call that angina. When that pain occurs, you stop, you rest, and then that pain actually gets better. As the risk climbs and as disease progresses, you'll start to get those symptoms with less and less activity. Oftentimes, we want to power through and we may ignore those warning signs. And unfortunately, that may lead to a heart attack when those symptoms simply do not go away. Regardless of rest, they come on, are very intense, and persist. And definitely at that moment, I would urge anybody to seek medical attention.
Yeah, I'm sure these are tips that everyone is so grateful to know and watch out for as we continue this conversation on heart disease. Dr. Paulson, thanks so much for being here with us today.
Thank you.
All right, well, so what can you do to prevent heart disease? Just ahead, the keys to leading to a healthier heart lifestyle. Let's Talk Cincy. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Dr. Angelica Hardy joins us now, and she's the Vice President of Community Impact for the Greater Cincinnati American Heart Association. Dr. Hardy, thanks so much for being with us. And heart disease is the #1 killer of both men and women. How much is hereditary versus lifestyle? Let's talk about that. How much does that make an impact?
It's about half and half. So yes, we know that we can't change our family genetics. It's very important that we are aware of our family history of heart disease, but there is so much we can do. So lifestyle can play a huge role in how you really go throughout your life and prevent heart disease or even manage your heart health.
And let's talk about prevention. What can we do to reduce our risk of heart disease?
Yes, so we call them our life's essential 8. So we have our health factors, right? So that is eating healthier, incorporating, adding color, fruits and vegetables, exercising. We like to talk about moving more. So it's not just like run a marathon every week, right? But what does it look like moving in your lifestyle, right? Is that taking a walk while you're on your lunch break? Is that line dancing? Is that swimming? Whatever is fun for you to move more. In addition to that, we are talking about how to help people quit smoking, right? How to improve your heart health by quitting smoking or help working on smoking less. In addition to that, we also really want to manage our weight, right? So we want to work on losing weight, managing our cholesterol, our blood pressure, and our blood sugar. And then our last one that we just added, which is really, really important, is getting enough sleep. So making sure that we are getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night, which may be difficult, but we know studies have shown that it improves our heart health.
These are all great tips and important for people to address. And talk about blood pressure, of course, and tobacco. You touched on this a little bit. What is the American Heart Association doing to address these issues?
A lot. We are really working on creating access points for people to take their blood pressure. We want you to go see your primary care doc and know your numbers each year, but we also are working to put blood pressure monitors in places that you may visit more regularly. Your barbershops, your hair salon, your community rec center, wherever you are going more often, we want you to know your numbers more often because that is our most modifiable risk factor for heart disease and things that we can actively change with lifestyle.
And there are ways that people can reach out to you guys to get those tips and also to incorporate them into their everyday lives.
Yes.
All right, Dr. Hardy, thanks so much for joining us here. And still ahead, every minute counts when a person is in heart distress. The life-saving tools getting new attention when Let's Talk Cincy returns. Welcome back to Let's Talk Cincy. When Bills safety Damar Hamlin suffered a cardiac arrest, it put a lot of things under the spotlight, including the importance of AEDs. That's the device that likely helped save his life. AEDs help keep the blood flowing and organs running, and today they are not required by law in public spaces. But AED advocates say the life-saving medical device should be mandatory in more places.
Exactly 1 week ago today, the entire country saw how a matter of seconds meant the difference between life and death for Bills safety Damar Hamlin.
As soon as you saw the ambulance on the field, it was, that's not normal.
The combination of immediate action from the Buffalo Bills medical staff, CPR, and an automated external defibrillator, or AED, changed the game for Hamlin's chances of survival.
I've been in that situation where the outcome wasn't good.
11 years ago, Logan Batson's brother, Cameron, had a sudden cardiac arrest on a soccer field.
There was not an AED on the field.
Batson died on the soccer field.
Really, just at this point, I just wish that all communities, all fields, all schools could have that opportunity, that there's going to be an AED and CPR as fast as possible.
According to the American Heart Association, less than 12% of people who suffer cardiac arrest survive. Survival rate decreases every minute after a collapse, and the average EMS response time is 6 minutes, making every second crucial. Logan Batson and his family started a nonprofit to make sure other people have a better chance of survival in the event of a cardiac arrest.
We've had schools reach out. They want AEDs. They saw what happened. They know how important it is. I think not only having the AED on site, but having that emergency plan. When this happens, if this happens.
And Cameron's Cause has donated AEDs as far as Haiti. Now, Dr. Paulson and Dr. Hardy rejoin us now. And Dr. Paulson, the first question is for you. There's so many questions about AEDs and CPR. First of all, what is CPR? How do you perform it? And, what if you aren't certified? Should you still perform CPR?
These are outstanding questions. So CPR is cardiopulmonary resuscitation, and it is the act of mechanically pumping the heart with a person's hands. CPR can sound really overwhelming, and obviously it's very easy to feel helpless when you see a person that's collapsed and unresponsive in front of you, but everybody, regardless of whether or not you have medical training, is perfectly capable of doing this. So CPR is when you push hard, you push fast, and you don't stop, and all you need is 2 hands to do it. A lot of people ask questions about, do I need to do mouth to mouth or rescue breaths with CPR? That answer is no. All we want you to do is recognize that someone is in distress, that they're unresponsive, they're breathing irregularly, or have altered color. And with that, go get help. Take your hands, put them together, get over the chest, and push down. You want to push down and push hard, about half or a third of the chest wall diameter. And the idea is, while help is coming, we want you to push for as long as possible. What you're doing there is you're using your hands to pump the heart and get that blood flow to the brain and the vital organs. And people do better and have better outcomes following cardiac arrest when people do get bystander CPR. And that's whether or not that CPR is from a layperson, a relative, or from a paramedic. So that time to recognition of the emergency and CPR is critically important. We know that nationwide, only about 40% of patients actually receive bystander CPR. And we do estimate that those rates are lower in communities of color. So there are certainly some healthcare disparities at play. So I urge everybody, regardless of where you live, where you're from, if you have somebody in your life that you love and you care about, learn CPR so that you can save their life.
And I imagine that people put off giving CPR because of fear. Correct. How can people put off those fears of possibly hurting someone?
Correct. So I think that it is better to do your best in that situation and don't worry about hurting them. What you're doing in that moment is you're giving them the best chance to survive their cardiac arrest, both to survive getting to the hospital and then hopefully survive from the hospital stay without disability. As you cited before, about 10 to 12% of patients do survive their cardiac arrest, and that number's lower for people like Damar Hamlin that actually can walk out of the hospital and have a fantastic outcome with minimal to no disability. And so the other things that we can do is obviously activate the EMS system early, so call for help, get paramedics and local firefighters there. And as you mentioned in your piece just now, use of an AED. So people with rhythms that are shockable do better than people without a shockable rhythm. And, unfortunately, as your piece mentioned, AEDs, people don't often know where they are. They're common in public places, but again, they're not required. So often they're present in athletic stadiums and other places where people have large gatherings like schools, places of worship. There are apps that you can use to find an AED near you if you are in a situation where you're responding to an emergency. That app is called Pulse Point. If you are trained in CPR and you want to be notified in the event of an emergency that's near you, that you could reach on foot by running to it, Pulse Point actually notifies you. So it uses your phone GPS, tells you where to go so that you, as a trained layperson, can help a bystander in distress.
All good information, Erin. Dr. Hardy, let's bring you into this conversation because, of course, it comes down to resources. Where can people go to actually learn CPR?
Yes, there are a ton of resources in our community and on the internet, which I think is really important. So we want everyone to have these resources. So CPR@heart.org. We have a lot of videos, of course, on YouTube to learn hands-only CPR, as she mentioned. So there's just a ton of resources that we want to make sure we provide access to everyone to eliminate some of those disparities.
And when should people start to learn CPR? What's the best age? Should it be taught in schools as early as elementary school?
Yes, so actually in Ohio in 2015, we actually passed that learning CPR as a graduation requirement.
Wow.
So actually a lot of our schools locally are teaching youth CPR. So we're actually seeing a lot earlier, and we hear amazing stories of young people saving lives because they know CPR. So I think as soon as Dr. Pilson mentioned, as soon as you can use your two hands and continue to learn CPR, it's never too early. We hear these amazing stories of youth and young adults saving lives. So I think learning as soon as possible. I think a lot of youth were sparked by what happened and are really willing and ready to learn.
And I know it sounds funny, but when I did learn CPR, they taught me the Bee Gees song, Staying Alive. Talk about just that reference and how it kind of sticks in someone's mind and why you should possibly do that when you're performing CPR.
Sure. So Staying Alive is actually at the correct rate for chest compressions. So not only is it a convenient thematic reference, but it is about 100 beats per minute. And when you're pushing with your hands, you want to push at a rate of 100 to 120 times per minute. And obviously, you lose all sense of time when you're in a medical emergency, especially when you're taking care of somebody that collapsed in front of you that you know. So the best way to stay centered, to stay on rhythm, is to have a song going in your head, such as Staying Alive by the Bee Gees. It works well, it's optimistic, and it will get you doing the compressions at the correct rate.
I bet when they made that song years ago, they didn't think it would be used for that. All right, thanks so much, Dr. Paulson, Dr. Hardy, for all of the useful resources and tips for us to help people stay alive in the event of a cardiac arrest. All right, to find a CPR class is really easy. Just go to cpr.heart.org and click on Find a CPR Course or Take 10cincinnati.com. Now, just ahead, a very personal story for me. My mom shares her story of being a cardiac arrest survivor. We'll be right back. Welcome back. As we continue the conversation about cardiac arrest, I have a personal story within my own family. In 2015, my mother went into medical emergency and went into cardiac arrest. And thankfully today, she's here to share her story. I'm joined by Jacqueline Matthews. Now, Mom, thanks so much for being here. Talk about what happened the night that you went into cardiac arrest.
Okay, that night I was at the casino with my sister and cousin, and I didn't feel any pain, or I didn't actually feel anything. I just passed out, and I told my sister I was ready to go, and the next thing I knew, she said I just passed out and I faint on the floor.
Now, was CPR performed on you, and what about an AED in the casino? Was that available?
Well, yes, CPR was performed on me. There was a friend of mine at the casino who was a cardiac nurse. She happened to hear my sister yell my name, and she came over and actually performed CPR on me. She did come to the hospital the next day, and she did say that the casino defibrillator was not working. And I understand from when I woke up, they told me that actually I had CPR 3 times.
So when you say that you got CPR'd 3 times, does that mean your heart stopped 3 times?
Well, that's what I was told. When I woke up from the first thing the nurse told me was that I did die 3 times.
Of course, I was there alongside of your recovery, but what was the recovery process like for you, and how long did you have to be on a breathing machine or a ventilator, and then the days following that?
Well, I was, when I woke up, I think it was a day or 2 later, that was when they were taking I was incubated in the hospital, and that's when they were taking the tube out of my throat. And I was in the hospital for 7 to 10 days. I had 3 surgeries performed, 3 procedures performed while I was in the hospital.
Lastly, I think we're all learning about cardiac arrest. We've heard of heart attacks, but what have you learned about cardiac arrest that you didn't know before?
That my perception of having a heart attack is you would feel the way I thought it happened. You would feel a pain in your chest, but none of that happened with me. It was just that it actually is and can be a silent killer. You can be unaware that you even have the disease, and it can just happen without any pain or any forewarning. So that's basically what happened to me.
Anything you want to add?
It changed my lifestyle, changed my life. I did retire after that. It gave me a new perspective on life and how important it is. Of course, all of my children, you included, and my 3 sons and my husband, my siblings, everybody, I had full support, and that helped me through my recovery. And
well, it's a miracle that you're here, and of course, I'm glad that you're here. Thanks for sharing your story.
It is, and thank you. I love you.
I love you too. We love our old gal, and we're glad that she's still here with us, and we are glad that you joined us tonight for Let's Talk Cincy. Thanks for joining us. We will see you next week for another edition of Let's Talk Cincy.